French, German, and Spanish. And we're saying a welcome to Pearson. I think many of you will have been with us on the previous version of the event. Now, I'm just going to we're going to sort of make a start. So what we're going to do today is we're going to just do the little bit of welcome from Pearson again. We're going to have a look at the overview really today of the assessment requirements. That's to say what the actual exam papers are going to look like, and get you familiar with those. So we'll talk about the assessment requirements, what's actually being assessed, although we looked in detail at the assessment objectives in the previous session. And then we're going to have a look at the listening, reading, writing, and speaking papers. And we'll remind you again of the things we said last time about areas where we can offer you some support. As just a little warning now, that for the speaking session, we have a recording of a candidate speaking, but at the moment we've been unable to play that recording. So we're hoping that we can get that sorted out during the course of the hour and a half or so before we actually need it. If we're not able to, we'll make sure that that recording comes out to people after the event today. Okay, so the idea really today is to make sure that you understand the assessment objectives for the qualification, and also get yourselves familiar with the question types for the qualification. So what the questions actually look like in each of the papers. And also to begin to understand the mark schemes for the qualification. And we're going to get you to do a little bit of practice using the mark schemes and using exemplar student work. So there's a delegate booklet that we need you to have downloaded, and just to make sure that you've got that ready a little later on in the session for when you need it. And then we'll have a look, as I mentioned, at support that may be available to you. Okay, so let's move on then. So we're just going to ask you, do the same thing we did before, just to a bit of getting to know you. So which languages are you currently teaching? So we'll just pull that poll up on the screen if we can, and get you to click on that poll. Okay. Here we go, and we see the poll. Okay, so that's good. So actually a reasonable balance. We've got all of the three languages represented. French a little bit higher than Spanish. Okay, lovely. Thank you. That's useful. And now we're going to move on, and I want to just ask you the next question, which is also, are you teaching the current Edexcel International GCSE specification? So we're interested to know who's new and who's sort of joining from an existing spec. So can we have poll 2, and let's have a look at people's responses for that. Okay, so it's looking like, yes, we've got about a sort of a 2/3, 1/3 split between people who are teaching the current one, about 2/3, and about 1/3 of people who are new. So that's useful. That's interesting to know and to see. Okay, and now really just we're just going to ask you to pop in the chat something that's anything really that's your main reason for attending today. What is it that you'd like to get out of today in particular? So can we just get people to drop a few comments into the chat, and we'll have a look at those during the course of the session. And if you're just looking for general information, that's fine. Yeah, preparing students. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's good. Thank you. So, yeah. Okay, starting Pearson in a new school. Interested in the speaking, about the speaking part. Okay, thinking about the reading. Okay. Okay, good. Well, all of those seem to be the things that we're going to cover today. So that's good to know as well. Right. Okay, so let's get cracking then. So we'll do the sort of welcome to Pearson. These are the things that I mentioned before. So just to say, you know, if you're joining new, obviously we're one of the world's leading learning companies. We've got a heritage going back over 150 years, so it's an established company, Pearson, and we're also partnering with schools, universities globally. So it's a global organization. And Pearson Edexcel, which is the exam branch of Pearson. Pearson, of course, also is a publisher, partners with 6,500 schools and colleges. Incredibly, we mark over 10 million exam scripts in the UK alone on behalf of the Department for Education. And Pearson exists operates in 70 countries worldwide. So we're going to move now. Well, let's get into the main business really for the session today. We're going to have a look at the overview really of the assessment requirements. Now, in the previous session, we looked in detail really at what we understood by the assessment objectives, and I mentioned that those sometimes could be a guide to deciding on the outcomes you want from individual lessons and sequences of learning. But just to remind you, we have 4 assessment objectives. So assessment objective 1 is to understand and respond in writing to spoken language. So that's the listening component. They're listening and they're writing down answers. Assessment objective 2 is to communicate in writing using a register appropriate to the situation, showing knowledge of a range of vocabulary in common usage and of the grammar and structures prescribed in the specification, and using them accurately. So AO2 is writing. It's their ability to write in French, Spanish, or German. AO3, assessment objective 3, is to understand and respond in writing to written language. So that means that's the reading component, reading comprehension. And AO4 is the communicate in speech. That's the speaking. And of course, you notice a similarity of wording between AO1 and AO3, the listening and the reading, both test comprehension. They are receptive skills, and assessment objective 2 and assessment objective 4 are productive skills, testing, writing and speaking. And again, we mentioned previously that each of those 4 skills are sort of located in a particular paper. So paper 1 is listening, and it just assesses the assessment objective 1. Paper 2 is reading and writing, so those 25% assessed there, but it's divided into 2 sections, and paper 3 is speaking. And so I think it's also just worth remembering that anybody who might be coming from the UK national GCSE, that reading and writing on international GCSE go on the same paper. Okay. So I'm going to just talk to you a little bit about now the minimum core vocabulary list. So at the end of the specification, you'll see that there's a vocabulary list. And this is a vocabulary list which is aimed to help you plan your scheme of work for your students. And so what we say is that questions that are targeted at grades 1 to 5, so what in the national GCSE would be foundation tier, are going to be based on this vocabulary list, although these questions might include some unfamiliar vocabulary. The vocabulary is listed under the different topics and subtopics, and these can be found in Appendix 1 in the specification, which is included in your delegate pack. And you see that example of those words, for example, there for topic by topic, theme by theme. So you can have a look at what will appear for assessment in each area of vocabulary. Now, we're going to have a look now at the listening paper. We're going to sort of start by working through the different papers, and at certain points during the next few little sessions about the actual exam papers, we'll give you a moment or two to look at the delegate booklet and to do a bit of work in the background. I won't take a huge amount of your time to do that, but we will allow you time just to get yourselves familiar, particularly if you're new to the specification. So let's just have a look at the listening paper in terms of the requirements and in terms of the assessment. Now, the paper carries 40 marks in total, and the duration of the paper is 30 minutes plus 5 minutes of reading time. So the candidates are able to look through the paper, they're able to read through, have a look right the way through for 5 minutes during that reading time. So again, the sort of thing that you might want to be thinking about in terms of exam strategy is training students how to use those 5 minutes effectively. They should be active during those 5 minutes, and it might maybe mean that they're going to be circling things or highlighting things or underlining or looking in particular detail. And then the actual recorded part will be a 30-minute test, and they're going to hear 7 recorded extracts in the target language. And there's an incline of difficulty throughout the paper. So we would expect that, question 1, the first question is the easiest one, and by the time they get to the end, that will be the most difficult one. So again, that's also useful information for teachers as you're practicing with sample assessments and past papers. At what point are your students really starting to find that paper a particular challenge, and that will give you a sort of guide to where we're going with their sort of level, and also for you to see kind of particular improvements as you practice. Now, the task types on the listening paper, we're going to have a look at 1 or 2 of those in a moment, but they include multiple choice, multiple matching, note taking, table completion, and also gap fill questions. You can also expect that within the multiple choice questions, there will be elements of distraction. So there may be a word or an idea that's hinted at in the recording, but that's not quite the correct answer. Maybe it's a negative in the recording, but it's positive in the option. So making sure that students are aware that those elements of distraction can be there. In the majority of cases as well, the testing will test at the level of a phrase rather than at the level of an individual word. So just spotting an individual word which seems to be part of an answer in a multiple choice question is a risky strategy for students. You might want to practice with students that whole metacognitive bit of saying, well, actually, have a look beneath the surface of the question. How is that distraction working? Not just which is the right answer, but why are the wrong answers wrong? How is the examiner setting those questions? And so there's all sorts of things that can be useful, I think, to be doing. And we also talked in the previous session about some strategies for developing listening skills. So just we've talked a bit about the questions. There's a mixture of objective questions. Those are the questions where they tick a box and the paper will start with those, and then we move progressively into something where students need to write a little bit more. So, for example, we have this is an example from question 4 from the 2023 Spanish paper. And students need to decide for each of those people that they're going to hear speak, each of those 6 people, whether their opinion of doing sport is positive, negative, or positive and negative. So again, this is a question type which will be a consistent feature. I think it's also worth saying one of the things that you will find with Pearson Edexcel papers is that the question types are consistent. So question 4 will always be this kind of question. Okay, so is it positive, negative, or positive and negative? And so we may have a person who says, I like football. That's a positive opinion. I don't like tennis. That would be a negative opinion. But somebody else might say, I like football, but I'm not so keen on tennis. And that would be a positive and negative opinion. So be aware of that question type. And of course, it's going to be likely to be opinions based. So think about the way that those things might be expressed as well. How do we express positive and negative opinions? And also for those where we've got a positive and negative opinion, how are we likely to be using the language to connect those? But, or on the other hand, or however, so we're likely to hear a word like that in there as well to sort of differentiate between the positive and negative. So having a look at a different question type then, question 6, and this is a picture, this is a question from the 2023 German paper. And in this question type, there's a bit more reading to do. You see, there's a little bit more work to deal with it. It's not just positive, negative, and negative. What we've actually got to do here is we've got to decide which of those words fits into the space, the gap in the sentence. You'll notice as well in those sentences A to F that sometimes the word fits on the end, sometimes it goes in the middle. So wherever the 3 dots are, that's where the word from the list will fit. And again, we'd hope that you are training students to do things like identify the nouns and identify where there might be adjectives or the kind of word. And also to train them to have a look in their 5 minutes reading time at each of those sentences and work out which are the possible ones, because of course, in that question A, not all of those words could possibly fit in terms of grammar, but they also couldn't fit in terms of sense and meaning. And you will remember as well that students on the reading and writing paper do a grammar test. So the idea of, parts of speech and all of those things, grammatical fit, can also be used as a skill to develop the student's ability to answer questions of this type. And then question 7 requires a fair bit more really, because students need to listen to a conversation, and they need to take some notes, and they need to make those notes in the target language. But keep in mind, you can see the amount of space that's given. We only need brief answers. Okay, so they will hear more than they need to write. So they don't need to transcribe huge chunks of what they hear. They just need to fill in the notes there. And in each case, we're going to have some positive aspects and some negative aspects. In this particular example, for each of the two categories that they're going to speak about, they've got 2 positives and 1 negative, but possibly that could be different, and it could be that we have 1 negative and 2 positives. So they have to write the opinion of young people about helping around the house. And so they need to jot in from what they hear 2 positive aspects, and it may be things like helps parents, could be a positive aspect based on what they hear. Okay, so that's a note taking. Now, just to say as well that examiners, we are testing comprehension here. We're not testing students' ability to write correct French. So provided that what they write is reasonably clear, we're not concerned if there are spelling or minor grammatical errors in what they write. Okay, so we don't need to worry too much about that. And they're sort of given an example there of the kind of the sort of things that they might write, the sort of level of what they might write. And that kind of gives them a guide from that example. Okay. Now, just then to say a few things about examiner reports. So examiner reports for each paper are produced every series, and you should find those really useful documents because they're written by the principal examiner, the person who's responsible for the paper, and they give you some sort of insights really into the approaches the approaches to marking, and also some kind of tips about maybe how to develop skills in a particular question for the future. And I think also you can look at your own candidate's work against, when they do a mock, for example, against the examiner's report, and see whether they are kind of true to the bigger picture pattern. And that's a sort of guide for teachers as to whether particular areas, particular questions maybe need to be worked on a little bit more. These reports as well, you'll find them on the website for this year's exams and also for any previous years. So they're and usually the examiner's report is published not long after results day for a particular series. So keep an eye out for those reports and use them to good effect. And I won't read this out to you, but it's just an indicator. This is from that French question 7 that we saw. And you'll see there the level of detail that you're going to be able to get from those examiners' reports. And also it's interesting, you see that the principal examiner there has begun to explain perhaps why students chose certain answers. Maybe they, it was about helping around home, and maybe they put in their own opinion and that sort of thing, rather than putting what was actually said on the recording. So it just gives you there an idea of the level of detail that you can expect. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to get you just to do a quick 5-minute activity now. So I'm going to just tell you what I'm going to get you to do, and then I'll give you 5 minutes to do it. So in your packs, you'll see the paper mark scheme and examiner reports for the 2023 series in each language folder. So you need to take 5 minutes to read through these materials and add any comments or questions to the chat box. And you might also want to ask other delegates how they teach certain skills. I think we may not be able to manage that bit, but I'm just going to give you 5 minutes or so to familiarise yourself with the paper, the mark scheme, examiners' reports, and so on. So I'm going to go quiet now for 5 minutes, and I'll be back to talk to you when you've had an opportunity to have a look at the listening papers. Okay.
Hi everyone. I've added the booklet to the resources section within Zoom as well. If you're unable to access the resource section, you can download it through the link that I've put into the chat.
Thank you very much.
Because I've just noticed there's a few people saying that they can't.
Yes, I saw as well.
Yeah,
but I don't have control over that. I unfortunately.
neither do I. Yeah, this is what's been sent from a training team. So that's what I'd.
If we don't have everything, we don't need to worry too much. I think it's perhaps the sensible thing would be to let me just see if people have things now. Yes, there should be language folders, shouldn't there?
Yeah, so all that's been sent is this delegate booklet. But there's no other materials that's been sent to me.
Yes, excuse me, everybody, a moment. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and let's have a look at if I can just see what it is we are supposed to have. And apologies, I'm very sorry if we don't have what we're supposed to have. Yes, I think actually everything we need to look at is going to be in the delegate booklet. I think the error must be on the slide, because I can see now, looking at the delegate booklet, that everything's there. So I think my apologies. I think perhaps the error came from the slide rather than. So yes, actually what you should have seen would be the delegate booklet. Look, just apologies for the confusion. I think in order to sort of make sure we go through everything, we're going to try and press on. But you saw in the delegate booklet, we've got those elements from the listening paper, and you've got comments in the examiner's report. I'm going to move on and do accept my apologies for that, but for that confusion. Let's have a look at think about the reading paper now. We'll kind of get ourselves back on track. So the reading paper then, it's a reading and writing paper, but in this session we're looking at the reading section. So the reading section carries 40 marks, as does the writing section. We'll have a look at that in a moment or two. And the total mark there for the paper is 80 marks. The paper lasts an hour and 45 minutes. And so candidates need to be managing their time effectively. So we're looking to kind of split that time roughly between reading and writing. So candidates need to work, of course, on time management as well for this paper. It's quite a long paper, quite a lot to do. There are 5 reading passages in the target language. And one of those texts is taken from a literary source, although, as we mentioned last time on Monday, those literary sources are very heavily adapted and abridged to bring them into line with the level that we need to test for this paper. Question 4 also requires candidates to do some note taking from the text. We'll have a look in a moment. And then for the writing section, there are 3 writing and grammar questions. So question 6 is a 75 to 80 word task. Question 7 is 130 to 150, and question 8 is a grammar-based task. And we will have a look as we move through at what those tasks look like and what they entail. So if we have a look at question 3, we're sort of getting an idea. Again, the questions are ramped, so we will start with the easiest question and then we move up in terms of the level of difficulty, and that's reflected in the level of the language in the text, but also in the question type, so tick a box at the beginning, but maybe later on they need to be writing something. So here the candidates would be asked to put a cross in the 8 correct boxes. And they're also told that some boxes have more than one cross, and some may have no crosses at all. So it will look like that. Okay, so we're looking for 8 crosses in that grid, but as we mentioned, some of them might not have a cross at all, and some of them might be used twice. Okay, so just to be aware that the strategy is important there, and it's important that students are aware that, you know, they're not just choosing from that sort of automatically from that list. And as they're thinking about it, you know, so I'm going to celebrate with my family, it says in the first one. Okay, so we maybe are going to we're going to read things about celebration with family. The level of the language in the question there, I'm going to celebrate with my family, is very simple. But of course, this is reading, this is question 3, so there will be some demand in there. So there may be other ways that we say celebrate, and we may be looking about have a party with my cousins. Okay, would be celebrate with the family, for example. Okay. And then question 4, again, and we see the text getting longer and more complex. And this is our literary text. And this text then asks students to make some notes. So they're, again, filling in a word or a very short phrase. So we don't want very much. We don't want them to copy out huge chunks of the text. Really do try to warn your students not to do that. Be guided also by the number of marks down the right-hand margin, because that kind of tells them the level of detail that's needed. We really just probably need one word or a very short phrase to answer each of those, to fill in those notes. And they are supposed to be notes. Okay, they're not supposed to be sentences. That's all they need to do, is to make it. It tells them in the instructions to make notes, and they need to do those notes in the target language. Okay, so we're going to have a look now, hopefully in the delegate booklet, and we won't look for each language, but there should be some exemplars of question 4, and with a commentary from the examiner. So we're going to give you now just a few minutes, perhaps we'll give you probably 3 or 4 minutes, just to have a quick look at those. So for question 4, for reading, just to get yourself familiar. Okay, so we're going to make a move and go forward with this. Okay, so we've had an opportunity to have a look. Now, just pressing on then, let's have a look at question 5. So question 5 is the final reading text, and it's longer, it's denser, it's more complex. Keep in mind, we said that within each of the skill areas, the papers are ramped. So this is the top level that is required. So we sort of see the text has, and you can see even just looking at it, longer sentences, it's got a wider range of connectives, we've got subordinate clauses, we will have also a wider range of time frames and tense use, and so on. Okay. In addition to that, some more complex ideas. And for this text, candidates are required to answer in the target language. And so, again, just important for them to be aware that they're given a guide by the number of marks and the number of details required. So they need to sort of stick very closely to that 1 mark, 1 detail. And they are allowed to use some words from the text, but again, they need to be careful that when they answer the question, they don't make their answers ambiguous by doing things like changing from, if it's a first person writer in the text, that they would need to produce a third person answer or use an infinitive or so on. So their answer, we're not marking for grammar, we're not marking for spelling, but their answer needs to be sufficiently clear and unambiguous that it answers the questions. Okay, and they also need to have some practice in reading the questions carefully, because you see the questions themselves. What do the universities do if the students have bad marks? Okay, and so we would expect in the text that we're going to find that answer, but there will also be some elements of distraction. There will be other things that the students that the universities do. And it continues like that. So there are 10 marks for that question. So again, quite a long question, quite a long text, and also quite a complex text. So that will assess students at the top grades, really. Okay, so we're going to get you now to we're going to give you a few minutes now just to have a look in the booklet at the 2 exemplar for, or whatever is there for question 5 and the commentary. So we'll just give you an opportunity just to sort of familiarize yourself with that, and I'll just go quiet again for a few more minutes. Okay, and we'll move on a little from there as well. So we're going to look, having sort of talked a bit about listening and reading, and you've had a brief opportunity to get yourself familiar with those papers and also the examiner's reports, how the mark schemes work. And of course, as I mentioned really last time, for those two comprehension components where students do need to write an answer, examiners are sensitive to the fact that students will express things in different ways, and that there may be sometimes alternative ways to answer a question, and not every possible expression of an answer will always be able to be included on the mark scheme. So in terms of your own approaches to assessment, the question is, did the student answer the question correctly or not? Where they've had to write something, is that a valid response to the question? And it may not be exactly expressed as the mark scheme shows, but if they've answered the question and they've demonstrated comprehension, then of course the marks are given, and the approach is always one of positive marking. Now, we've sort of had a look at the reading section. We're going to sort of think about the writing section. So of course, each of those 40 marks, total 80, we're still on the same paper, so it's an hour and 45 minutes. But we're going to just have a think about those writing sections, the short writing task, the 75 to 80. I don't know why it says 80 to 75 here, but I suppose either way is fine. 130 to 150 task, which is the longer task, and also the grammar-based task. So if you would like to just have a look now, we can see question 6. So question 6 will look like that in French, Spanish, or German. So the candidates are given a title, so they know what they need to write about. And then there are 4 words in a box: people, dispute, argument, yesterday, activities. And they have to write a 60 to 75 words. That's why it said 80 to 70, 60 to 75 words in French on the subject of their family. So apologies, actually there was an error on the slide that I was provided with. So it's 60 to 75 words in French on the subject of the family, and they're told you must use all of these words above. So each of those 4 words needs to be used in the answer. Now, we're talking 60 to 75 words, so 15 to 17 words, I suppose, 4 sentences, and you know, dividing that equally between is probably a good strategy. And they do need to use those words. So maybe they're going to say, you know, there are 4 persons, 4 people in my family, and then they would have used up that one. Yesterday, whatever it is, they're going to say, the activities that we do on Sunday are, okay. Sometimes there is an argument with, okay, and so we need to use each of those 4 words. They don't need to be used specifically in a sentence or anything in different sentences, but they do need to appear in what the students write. So how is it marked? Well, firstly, for communication and content. So if we look at what we give 5 marks for, the candidate produces a detailed and fully relevant response to the task. So they write about their family and they use those words. Shows a clear ability to express ideas and opinions and to describe or inform as appropriate to the task. And what they write has a coherent, logical flow and sequence of ideas. Okay. So notice as well the things that we're asking for in the mark scheme. express ideas and opinions, okay, and to describe or inform. So again, teachers need to be working on making sure that those things are included in that response. And they're also assessed, and they get 5 marks for linguistic knowledge and accuracy. So for 5 marks, they use a range of vocabulary and grammatical structures. It's not just I am, I am, I am, I am. We may be using some different persons of the verb, maybe using some different time frames, and so on. Language is manipulated to produce fluent sentences. So what they write for the top mark will read nicely, both for the content of what they write make sense, and it will also flow in terms of language. And it's very accurate with only isolated minor errors, for example, spellings, genders, and agreement. Now, keep in mind that in terms of how the ramping within the paper works, question 6 is designed to be the easier of the 2 writing tasks. So question 6 differentiates for the lower grades. And so it's very accurate, but we can still have isolated minor errors, okay? And the fact that we don't need perfection, even really in question 7, is an important feature. Okay, now we're going to have a look. We've got an example here. Now, this is a nice example, what the student has done, and I think this is a helpful strategy, although it's not an absolute requirement, is that they have underlined the 4 words from the boxes that they've used so that the examiner can see instantly where those words go. And they've used dispute they've done it as a verb. Okay, so that kind of gives them, but we could have used that perhaps as a noun as well. So the candidate says, my family consists of 5 persons, 5 people. Okay, and made up of and includes me. I've got a brother who okay, and so on. Was so annoying yesterday. Okay, there we go. So we see there that the candidate has done all of the things that are required. So this, and you'll see in a moment, we're going to have a look at what the examiner's report says about this response. You notice as well that the candidate has used up the 4 words in the first half, and again, that's absolutely fine. But it's everything they write is relevant and clear and nicely expressed. So what are we told? The candidate was awarded 10 out of 10, so 5 for communication and content and 5 for linguistic knowledge and accuracy. The writing is clear and coherent. All 4 stimulus words are included appropriately. There is detail and the ideas and opinions are clear. There's a good range of vocabulary and structures. The writing is accurate with minor errors. The language is fluent and reads well. The candidate has underlined the 4 stimulus words. This is good practice as it helps to ensure that none are left out. So that's a useful strategy for teachers to train students to do. It's not a requirement, but it's a useful strategy for students to do. And of course, they could use the word more than once as well. They're not limited to using that word only once, but they need to use it at least once. And there's also a note from the examiner, which again reflects the thing that I was just talking about, really, that this task is aimed at grades 1 to 4. So candidates are not expected to produce an extended piece of writing using complex language. The 4 stimulus words must be used verbatim, so they have to use the words exactly as they appear on the paper. The skill with this question is to be able to manipulate sentences so that the words fit in appropriately. The stimulus words themselves should not be changed in any way. Okay, so it's important for that guidance to be absolutely clear. Okay, they mustn't change those stimulus words. Now, interestingly as well here, we're told candidates are not expected to produce an extended piece of writing using complex language. The level of the language that candidate produced is a language that perhaps has headroom. Actually, they have written, perhaps, in terms of communication, they've written beyond the requirements of the task. Somebody saying they'd like to see a 7 instead of a 10, and yes, I do agree. And I think if you look at the exemplars on the website, there should be some yes, I know exactly what you mean. How would we guide that student? And I'll take that. We can have a look at you can have a look at what's available on the website, but I'll take that comment away really as we develop the training. So thanks for that. And but yes, Charles, thank you. We will sort of as we develop the training, we'll feed those comments back in. So moving on now to question 7. In question 7, the candidate chooses 1 out of 3 tasks, and they're guided to write between 130 and 150 words in French. Each of those tasks is supported by, well, they're told the thing that they have to, the purpose of the task. So in this case, it's either an email, or it's an article, or it's a blog. But there aren't specific marks for the kind of response to the task type. In a way, they will all just produce a piece of writing, but they are told that the kind of purpose. And they're also told that they need to mention those 4 points. Okay. Now, within those 4 points, you will notice in each case, we've got, we're asking for opinions and ideas, but we're also expecting candidates to demonstrate their use of past and future timeframes. Okay, so something that teachers can be usefully doing is getting students to be really familiar with looking at which of those bullet points are going to require past or future timeframes. And very typically, and I would say almost always, there will be some key modifier words that help students to find the time frame. So they need to be familiar with those. We don't just rely on them recognizing the verb form. There will be a modifier. So in that first one, looking at the past ones, how you prepared your last birthday party. So we've got last there. And in B, what you watched on TV recently. So recently is one that cues a past tense, and so on. And describe a traditional dish that you ate during a festival. So there, we are sort of the during something, okay, is a clue to the past, but they do need to be confident at looking at those. And the tense form here, we're using perfect tense in French, and the tense form will be consistent as well. So they need to be looking out for that. And then we've got the word future, next, those things that flag the future. So it's important to be kind of aware of those. And it's also important to make sure that in order to fulfill the requirements of the task, that they've answered the full all of the elements of each bullet point. So that in B, the advantages and disadvantages of having a TV in your room. So we don't just need advantages, we also need disadvantages as well. Okay, so making sure that they've read carefully the whole of those bullet points, and that they've answered the task very fully. There's no particular requirement that they cover each of the bullet points equally, but at the same time, it is probably quite good practice. Again, we're looking for about 35 words probably for each bullet point, give or take, in order to make sure that we've shown the range of structures and the range of vocabulary. So maybe 3, possibly 4 slightly shorter sentences for each bullet point. I'd also suggest that it's good practice to train students to write in paragraphs and to write 4 separate paragraphs, and to try to make sure that as they go through, they're not repeating the same vocabulary time and time again, that they're using a different ideas and a different set of language features, different sets of vocabulary. So we would sort of train them to respond absolutely to those bullet points. So when we kind of look at the mark schemes, we said that the mark schemes will tell markers that the candidate should have referred to the following bullet points. So that's the sort of starting point, really. So is making sure that the content refers to the question. And as I say, some paragraphing and some planning and all of that sort of thing is a really good way to make sure that they definitely do, because sometimes they have ability in French that they don't, or Spanish, German, that they don't demonstrate because maybe they miss out a bullet point, or they only answer one of the bullet points in a tiny bit of detail. Sometimes as well, it's important to train them to organize their work effectively, because that enables the examiner to find it. Again, they don't need to do them in the order that they appear on the paper, but it's probably a good idea to try to encourage them to do that, so that what they write is very, very clear. They can also use some of the language from those bullet points to begin to formulate their answers. What you like to listen to on the radio. So if they really, all you need to do there is to change that to j'aime, don't you? What I like to listen to on the radio is, and that then starts to cue the examiner into, okay, well, we're dealing with that bullet point, and then a next sentence, the next paragraph that starts, the advantages of having a television in your room. And again, something just to be mindful of, okay, it's that ça there, that, so the the advantage, so we maybe in my room, maybe we need to change that, or for young people of having a television in their room. Okay, so just look at those, how they're going to use that language from that bullet point. Nobody says you can't, but just be careful that we're kind of addressing the right persons there, because it's very easy to sort of trip over some of those things. Okay. So the marking then, again, that question is marked for communication and content, and also for linguistic knowledge and accuracy. So looking here at the communication and content mark, which is a mark out of 10. For 10 marks, the response shows an excellent ability to express ideas in a logical sequence, and errors do not interfere with comprehension for a sympathetic native speaker. So expressing the ideas in a logical sequence, as I said, if you follow the bullet points through, and you think of maybe 3 sentences with 3 key ideas, 3 different things to say about each bullet point, that also demonstrate the ability to use the time frame, if it's or if it's asking for a comparative, advantages and disadvantages, just show that they can do that, so that it's logical. And the response is entirely coherent. And while there may be minor ambiguities or digression from the theme, the response is confident, fluent, pertinent, and purposeful. And so it should just read nicely, and we're not looking for highly philosophical ideas or anything like that here. It's a simple enough task, but they need to make sure ideally they stick to the topic, that they write in this sort of fluent way, and what they say makes sense. Okay. And as they do things like give opinions and justifications, for example, a little element of sophistication is good there, isn't it? And so the candidate lower down who says, I like it because it's nice, that's not a terribly sophisticated justification. But if they say, I like such and such a thing because it's something I've had a lot of experience of in the past, and have always really enjoyed, activity holidays, and so I think this kind of sport would be great for me. That gives a more sophisticated response. So, and it makes it more interesting to read. And then 10 marks are also available for linguistic knowledge and accuracy for this question. So again, in the 9 to 10 box, we've got this excellent range of vocabulary and grammatical structures. And I think I talked on Monday about the idea of range. It's actually, we want to not constantly repeat the same vocabulary items, have a think about how some of those common overused words like problem could be changed to challenge or difficulty, so we've got little clusters of words around those things. We saw in those examples advantages and disadvantages, but what other synonyms or synonymous phrases can we use for advantage? The advantage, the positive points, okay, the interesting aspects, and those sorts of things. There would be ways to kind of develop that range of vocabulary around the tasks, and look carefully at the tasks. And develop your ideas for teaching around them. It's also worth saying with those tasks that, if you're a French teacher, have a look at the Spanish and German as well, and so on, because there will be sort of ideas there that you think, well, actually, that's an easy task that I could adapt into the language that I'm teaching, and it will give you more things to practice with, and some sort of kind of different approaches. And also this range of grammatical structures, and secure use of at least 3 tenses, including some complex lexical items, and no noticeable repetition. So it has that sort of range and variety. And again, as we were sort of talking about kind of the grammatical structures, it's maybe making sure we've got different persons of the verb as well. And very strong evidence of correct spelling, verb formation, and gender agreement. Now, that's not to say that we need absolute perfection at this level. We just need to make sure that there is strong evidence there. I can see a question, something just popped into the chat now. So we were asking, does overcomplicating the sentences, for example, trying to use a subjunctive and do it incorrectly, penalize the students? Yeah, I think some of my students tried, tried harder, and yes. Well, it's an interesting question. I think sometimes if they try to put in a subjunctive that doesn't quite work, we've not shown the grammatical knowledge because they maybe haven't quite expressed it correctly, but sometimes it will affect the communication and content because it jars. So, I mean, if we just go very briefly back to that previous slide, you know, the response is entirely coherent, and while there may be minor errors, so if the subjunctive fits and it works really well and it's coherent and it makes sort of sense in the context of what they're saying, yes, then great. But if they've just put it in for the sake of trying to show that they can use a subjunctive, but what it actually says affects the coherence, then yes, of course, that will impact on the communication and content mark probably. And I think one thing I would also say, we've sort of, I quite often say this, from an examiner's point of view, we never exactly penalise. We mark what's there, the quality of what's there, and anything that's wrong, you kind of ignore it. But the more there is that's good and right, the more the candidates move up the mark scheme. So one minor slip probably doesn't make too much difference, but I think the overcomplication can be an issue too, and I think perhaps this is you know, we sometimes you read candidates will write things like autant que je sache j'ai 16 ans, and it's okay, we've got a subjunctive, but it doesn't really mean any, it's kind of nonsense. So I think it's think about whether they can do it and make it coherent rather than shoehorn in particular grammatical features. Okay, I think the sort of spontaneity and authenticity of what they write is probably the more important thing, personally, I would say, but it's a kind of a personal view. Now, we've got an example here. I'm going to just give you a moment to read through, but I think you have it in the booklet as well if you're finding that slide tricky to read. But I will just give you a moment to read, and apologies if you're not a French specialist. You will have copies of the materials afterwards, so you can look in more detail after the event. Yeah, and I'm picking up on this idea, yes, that if what they've written is ambiguous and unclear, yes, it will, you know, I think that the key thing is that we're wanting them to, you know, and you can sort of see it here in most of those bullet points. We've got kind of 3 sentences of about 10 words, organized, isn't it, that we're looking at. We do sort of see some of that kind of variety, and we're looking for different ideas, but coherent ideas really in there, and students quite often need a bit of guidance about the ideas, you know, because, and particularly interestingly, I think with the future, because the future, anytime you write about anything with the future tense, you have to be creative, don't you? With the present, you can just say what it is. With the past, you tell the truth, but with the future, it requires that kind of element of creativity, really, because you're trying to invent something. So curiously, I think even though sometimes the verb form is easier in the future, sometimes the ideas part of it can be more difficult. Okay, right, we've had a little look, and there was a little bit more that went on there. So again, this was a full mark one, and I take away your comments about maybe wanting to see some sort of lower down where there was kind of room for development. But what we were told on results plus, we talked about results plus on Monday. And so this is a kind of service that's available for you to look at the examiner's reports in the context of actual exemplars. So the candidate provides in-depth information pertinent to the question and subject, including extended sequences of writing. Linguistically, the candidate has skillfully employed a range of grammatical structures, incorporating some complex constructions, and has successfully referred to past, present, and future time frames. Okay. So we're going to give you now just a moment to have a look in the booklet at one of the question 7 exemplars, and just take a few moments to have a look through. And then when we come back, we'll move on to having a look at question 8. Just give you a few moments, almost just to find it and have a scan through. Okay, and we're going to sort of move on. I'm going to just talk to you now a little bit about the grammar test part, and so we're just going to have a look at this and a look at what's involved, and then we'll kind of move on to talking about the speaking. So the grammar test will look like this. The candidates have a passage that they have to read, and at certain points in that passage, we've got 10 words which they need to manipulate grammatically to give the correct form within the passage. So this is a mixed comprehension and grammar test. They need to understand the whole sentence in order to choose the correct word and to manipulate it there. Okay, so currently the students, the pupils in my village do not something to school, do not go. And obviously what they've got to do is that they've got to find the subject of that, identify that it's a verb, first of all, and they've got to find the subject of that verb, and they've also got to think about the time frame, the tense that verb is going to require. We're told actuellement, so actually they know that it's currently, so that tells them present tense. And then we see that third person plural, and so they should be able to find the correct part of aller, and so on. And the text will use a range of different verbs and a range of different adjectives. Now, not all of those words will need manipulation. So both the adjectives and the verbs sometimes can just stay as they are. Okay, so again, just we need to make sure that they have the strategies. If it's a verb, they need to be finding the subject, and they need to be finding the time marker within the sentence that tells them, you know, what tense it is. That be commencé, but we've got l'année dernière, so we know that it was last year, so we know we've got past. And in there we've also got the il, again the that third person plural that we need. Okay, obviously they need to be aware of, you know, whether we're going to, if it's French, whether we're going to use être, or whether we're going to, whether it's avoir or être to form, for example, the perfect tense. And so we do see, you know, we've got a reflexive one there, and you know, so if that were to be past, then we would need to be making those decisions, making that choice. Okay, and so we see we've got the correct answers, and all of those things are put in there. Examiners, I think, would be sympathetic to alternative ways of expressing past and future. So things like periphrastic future would be likely to be accepted. That's the, you know, the future with aller, perhaps. And also if there were, you know, it was a sort of grey area between perfect and imperfect again. That again is the sort of thing that's likely to be accepted. But for the most part, the text will cue them very carefully into what is actually required. And there we've got a candidate response. Okay. And the commentary that came from the examiner. So here the candidate was awarded 8 out of 10. Only the answers to C and E are incorrect. Apart from these 2 answers, the candidate successfully identified the tenses, verb endings, and agreements required, including spotting that G did not need to change. So the examiner's note: in French and Spanish, where the future is tested in question 8, the following applies. If the infinitive is given in brackets, simple future is required. Okay. If a near future is required, the auxiliary will be given in brackets. Okay, and we do it that way. Okay, so that was the comment I was sort of referring to, but we have kind of clarity on that here. Okay. And we're going to just give you a few minutes now to have a look at question 8 in the booklet. So we'll just give 2 or 3 minutes and we'll come on to that. Can I just check with the stand officer if we've been able to locate the recording?
Hi, Tim. So I was told that you would have to skip this because Stacey, I believe, is running a meeting, so she won't be able to send that to you.
Okay, all right. So we need to leave that. I have an email that's arrived, but I can't quite get to it while I'm in the meeting, unfortunately. Okay, all right.
Do you want to? Oh,
Let me just
okay.
I'll stop sharing my. We'll give delegates just a moment to look at question 8, and let me just stop sharing a moment, and then perhaps I might be able to get to it.
Alors, nous allons commencer avec
Yes, it looks like we might be lucky and able to do it now. I seem to have that. Okay, let's sort of press on, because I'd like to have a look at the speaking. Now, the speaking test then is a 40 mark test, and it lasts 8 to 9 minutes. So there are three tasks really, but two kind of different approaches that candidates need to take. So in task A, the candidates need to respond to questions on a picture of their choice, and then in task B and task C, those are two discussions on two topics that are given to you by Pearson, so you will know which two topics you need to talk about. And the timings are 2 to 3 minutes for task A, and 3 to 3.5 minutes each for task B and task C. So we're going to just think about the picture-based discussion first. The teacher examiner, so that's you, must ask candidates 5 questions plus allowed prompts. But you need to prepare these questions. These are questions that you will need to kind of develop. So there are 5 types of questioning that you need to produce, and you need to sort of think about those questions for your candidates. And you need to ask 1 question from each type. So the first one is easy. You need to ask a question, a description of what's in the picture. So you say, can you describe what's in the picture, please? Okay. And then it's important that you, as the teacher examiner, start to be doing a bit of work on this. So we want a specific bit of factual information from the picture. And your students will all have chosen different pictures. So it's important as well that you try to think for all of your students about asking those questions roughly on the same kind of level. And then we need to have a past or future hypothesis question. What do you think these people have just done? What do you think these people are going to do next? We want some opinions about the picture, and also some evaluation of the main theme of the picture. And you're also allowed to ask, you must ask only those 5 questions, but you can do some prompts. You can prompt the students to say why not, anything else, is that all? If you think they haven't developed their responses enough, prompt them and push them to do more, but don't add in extra questions. So no other supplementary questions should be added. And you also mustn't deviate from those prompts as much as you might like to, and those prompts are given to you in the teacher examiner booklets and materials. Okay, so in the language of study. So the marking then for task A, the task A marking grid, is, well, firstly for communication and content. So responds to questions with consistently fluent and developed responses, consistently effective adaptation of language to describe, narrate, and inform in response to questions, expresses opinions with ease and gives fully developed justification, and pronunciation and intonation are accurate and intelligible. And of course, the response is also marked for linguistic knowledge and accuracy. So for 4 marks, consistently accurate grammatical structures, successful references to past, present, and or future events in response to questions, and responses are fully coherent and any errors do not hinder the clarity of communication. So again, we're not expecting absolute perfection. So we're going to, hopefully this will work, we're going to play you a recording of task A, which is based on this picture below. And then we're just going to sort of get you to think about, first of all, is the picture appropriate? Does the teacher examiner ask the 5 correct types of question? And does the teacher examiner use only the allowed prompts? Okay, now let me just see if we can play that. Okay, you need to hold that picture of that couple getting married in somewhere like Dubai or wherever it might be in your head, and I'm going to see if I can make the recording play. And it would be useful if the stand officer can just tell me if you hear it, because if you don't hear it, then we can't do it. So will you just tell me now if you hear?
La photo sur le thème E, les occasions spéciales.
Did you hear? Was anybody hearing anything? Yes, I can see some. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Okay, right. Let's do it then. Here we go.
Il y a 2 personnes qui sont mariantes. À gauche de la photo, il y a une femme qui lit la cérémonie de mariage. La cérémonie près de la rivière. À l'arrière de la photo, il y a un grand paysage dans une grande ville qui s'appelle New York. Il y a beaucoup de petites fleurs blanches avec de matériel violette. L'homme et la femme ont l'air contents mais émotifs.
Parle-moi donc de la femme à gauche de la photo.
La femme à gauche de la photo porte une robe de mariage longue, sans manches. Elle est grand et mince. Elle a cheveux marrons et chignons. Elle a l'air content mais émotif.
Alors, qu'est-ce qu'ils vont faire après la cérémonie?
Après la cérémonie, il y avait une grande fête à une grande maison. Il y a plus de personnes qui la cérémonie, comme la famille élargie et tous les copains des hommes et des femmes. Il y a beaucoup de nourriture comme le dîner. Les gens mangeaient le salade, la viande, la légume, la salade. Après le dîner, il y a un gâteau avec les petites fleurs sur ça. L'homme et la femme sont très contents.
Parle-moi d'une occasion spéciale que toi tu as aimée.
Pour moi, une occasion spéciale est Noël parce que je restais avec toute ma famille. Normalement, ma famille lui en grande maison dans la campagne. Et j'adore ça parce que j'adore donner les cadeaux. J'adore la nourriture de Noël comme la viande et la dessert. Aussi, j'adore voir ma famille.
Est-il toujours nécessaire de dépenser beaucoup d'argent pour des occasions spéciales?
Oui, je pense que oui, mais s'ils sont appropriés, comme le mariage, par exemple, parce que c'est une occasion spéciale, un jour important dans la vie. Aussi, pour la plupart des gens, ils célébrer une fois pour envie.
Très bien. Alors, nous allons maintenant passer à la première conversation. Il s'agit du thème B, l'éducation et l'emploi, et on va parler de l'école.
Okay, so we heard that nice conversation there. So is the picture appropriate? Well, yes, because it's got people, it's got a location, there's something happening, there are things that they can talk about. We can see the people, so yes, it's a good picture. Does the teacher examiner ask the 5 types of questions? Are the candidates asked to describe the picture? Then there are some details about the picture. Asked what's going to happen next, so that's the past or future hypothesis, and then they're asked their personal opinion about the topic of the picture, celebrations, and then they're asked some evaluation, and they pick up on things like the cost, and as far as I could see, the teacher examiner used the allowed prompts. Okay, let's just have a quick look then and see. So the examiner's comments: the task is conducted correctly with the teacher examiner asking 5 questions, one of the type required each by the specification. It lasts very slightly over the 2 to 3 minutes, but so little that it's not an issue. So try to stick to the time, but they still kind of assessed that to the end. And the candidate's chosen a suitable picture, so it includes people, objects, and interaction. The communication and content marks. Okay, so the candidate's able to answer all 5 questions. She expresses opinions, and so on and so forth. The answer to question 3, however, was a little bit more ambiguous, so this was the future time frame, which wasn't quite so clear. But nevertheless, a nice sort of performance there. Pronunciation and intonation, generally intelligible. So that candidate got 7 plus 3. Okay. And we sort of see, so it's 8 plus 4. It says there, but the candidate was given 7, so they're in that mark band. Okay, past, present, and future timeframes. Successful, occasionally some ambiguity. There's quite a high level of simple errors, but only occasionally is communication hindered. So we can say that for that candidate. Okay, so now let's just think briefly about the conversations. So to decide on the conversations, you use the randomization grid provided by Pearson. That will tell you which topic you're going to deal with for conversation 1 and conversation 2. So you don't choose, you make sure that you follow that grid carefully. You need to try to ask open questions. You need to also target your questions to the candidate's ability. So you can't have a list of questions, which is the list that you always use. They need to be targeted to stretch the most able, but also to support the weaker students. Try to link the questions to the previous response where possible. So that means you've also kind of got, even if you more or less know what you think they're going to say, you kind of got to listen and try to link this together to be a conversation. Try also to elicit a range of tenses and structures and vocabulary. And actually, the thing that we've seen earlier on in the design of the writing tasks, for example, is good practice in speaking questions. Don't necessarily assume that they will pick up on the tense of a question, but support it with a word like recently or in the future or soon. Those words that they are familiar with from writing, try to cue them into those things so that they know when you ask them that question that says récemment, that they've got to talk about something in the past tense. A range of structures. So you might look to have a comparative, do you prefer something or something else? And that will encourage a comparative, for example. Try to elicit as well opinions and justifications, and provide candidates with the opportunity to expand. And again, some of those prompts, anything else, and why not? So we don't need always to have a fully formed question. Sometimes you can push them to expand a little bit more. Now you need to respect the timings. That's really important. And task B and task C mustn't exceed 7 minutes, so 3 to 3.5 minutes each, because excess candidate material will not be assessed. So examiners at a certain point will stop listening. So once they get to that 7-minute mark, they will stop listening. So anything that happens after that, the candidate has wasted their time, you have wasted yours, but the examiners won't mark it. And so it's important just to keep an eye on those timings. And also at that sort of midpoint where you change from task B to task C, don't be afraid to stop the candidate. You may need to say, I'm sorry, we need to move on now. We need to go to the next task. So the marking is for, again, communication and content and linguistic knowledge and accuracy. So for 10 to 12 marks in the conversation topics, communicates detailed information relevant to the topics and questions, consistently extended sequences of speech, consistently uses language creatively to express and justify a wide range of individual thoughts, ideas, and opinions, consistently uses a wide variety of vocabulary, including uncommon language. That's things like changing problem to challenge, it's that sort of thing. And to consistently vary expression for different purposes. And pronunciation and intonation are consistently accurate and intelligible. They don't need to be native speaker standard, they just need to be accurate and intelligible. And the linguistic knowledge and accuracy mark grid rewards them for manipulating a wide variety of grammatical structures, frequent use of complex structures. That's quite often sentences where there's a subordinating conjunction and a subordinate clause. That's a good indicator of complex structures, but also things with conditional tense, for example. Consistently accurate grammatical structures, consistently successful references to past, present, and future. Notice this word consistently. Once or twice is not enough. They need to be doing these things all the way through for the mark in the top band. And fully coherent speech. Any errors do not hinder the clarity of communication. Okay. So we're going to listen we're just going to listen to a little bit, because time is not on our side, but we're just going to listen to just a minute or so now of a task B, just for you to have a little flavour. And I'm going to just stop sharing that, and we're going to go in and let's just listen to a little more. Okay, so here we go.
Qu'est-ce que c'est une journée typique pour toi à l'école?
Normalement, je me lève à 7 heures, partir à la maison à 8 heures. J'ai 9 courses par jour. Je retourne à ma maison à 4h30. D'habitude, j'ai fait mes devoirs, manger ma dîner avec ma famille et regarde un peu de télé dans la soirée.
Et alors, parle-moi de ton école, elle est comment?
Mon école est assez grande, assez moderne. Il y a 3 bâtiments qui sont traditionnels.
So we only had a tiny moment to listen to that. You heard a good but not great, not fabulous performance for that kind of, but nice and solid at this level. So this was a candidate that got an 18 in total there. It was nicely conducted. You heard that, you did hear in those couple of questions, the teacher sort of was asking open questions. We didn't quite get to where he prompted her, but you will have access to this recording, so you can listen in more detail if you're a French teacher and you'd like to listen to it. And there should be similar examples for Spanish and German. So in the 8-mark box, which so the candidate was given 7, the candidate's able to respond to nearly all the teacher's questions, kind of keeps going. Pronunciation and intonation are mostly intelligible, which we heard that at the beginning, and occasionally trips over words. Dinner, she says instead of dîner. Okay, so things like that are happening. And again, you can look at this in detail at your leisure. Marks for interaction and spontaneity. The candidate gets a 6 overall there. Mostly able to initiate and develop the conversation. You heard, didn't you, in that first little bit that we had, that she didn't give a very short 1 or 2 word answer. She started to sustain the conversation and the discussion, and she was at times, you will hear that at times she sort of leads it. So this is a good example of what we were talking about. We would have liked with writing to see one that wasn't absolutely perfect. And the linguistic knowledge and accuracy came as a 5 out of 8 there. And if we had the opportunity to listen all the way through, you would notice, okay, so we've got all of the time frames used, but some not entirely secure verbs in certain places. Okay. So just a few things really now to say in terms of how you prepare students for exams. We mentioned in the previous session about walking, talking mocks. So we sit the students in the exam, we take them through the paper, we unpick it, we talk about the skills that are required for each question, and then they do it question by question, so that we're not just testing their language, we're also developing their ability to respond to the assessment. Okay. And a lot of those things that I've picked up on as we sort of think about maybe things like that, you know, how you deal with those possessive adjectives that come from the bullet point in writing, if you want to rework that. Those are the sorts of things that you might want to look at in a walking, talking mock exam. And it's a good strategy. It's a widely used strategy to develop students' exam skills. And then I'm just going to whiz you through the support bit. Okay, so we looked at all of these things last time. We've got all of those different sources of support, and they fit into different phases of the teaching: the planning, teaching and learning, the exam preparation, and also the results support. So we talked about those things on Monday. These are just the things that people saw already, and I think we've got mainly the same group of people with us. Go to the websites, look very carefully at the websites, check the specification, and you will also find resources there. And those are resources that grow all the time. So keep looking and keep checking, because there is always more coming online for those specifications pages on the website. I mentioned Results Plus, so that enables you to find your own candidate's performance online, as well as sort of and match that and benchmark it all against performance of candidates in other centres around the world. So you need to make sure that you're aware and signed up for Results Plus. And a really useful and free service, which is a particular feature of Pearson. I mentioned Exam Wizard as well, that enables you to pull together from different sources the different questions to produce your own assessment, and also just to sort of look at that against the examiner's reports and mark schemes and so on. So again, that's a free to use resource for teachers. We mentioned also access to scripts. So once the students have sat the exam, you'll be able to see, you'll be able to look at their scripts, so you can have absolute clarity and transparency about the way the marking process works. And we also mentioned as well that we've got a range of published materials, and you're not absolutely required to use Pearson's materials. You can use your own, and there are other materials out there that are available. But again, if you are kind of interested, you will find that material is available there for you on the website as links. And contact one of your reps, and they'll be able to talk you through what else is available. And our subject advisor is Rebecca Waker. They put Walker there, but actually she's Waker. And you're able to contact Rebecca at teachinglanguages@pearson.com or on that phone number. And Rebecca really is your first line of contact for any sort of subject specific query. So anything you need to know or from follow-up from today or whatever, do please direct your query there, and they will get back to you. So I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat now and see whether we have questions that are unanswered. Okay, yeah. Now, kind of a couple of questions about certificates for today. Yes, I think they will be sent out and produced. I understand that happens. But again, chase up Rebecca if you didn't get it. And the audios for the student textbook will be a download, I think. But again, check on the website, because that will explain to you where you find those things. And that sort of brings me to the end. I'm going to say we've had a quite a rush through today, and so it was quite a long and quite intense training. So I hope I haven't sort of overwhelmed you with you know, kind of too much information. But can I just say a massive thank you as well for sticking with it. Oh, somebody's a question about evaluation for the fifth question in speaking. What does that mean? It's your opinion about the wider issues related to the topic. So question 4 is about your opinion about the topic of the picture, but it's the wider issue. So it's things like, do you think this is, people spend too much money on this, or do you think so it's that kind of evaluative question that we're looking for. And there are some exemplars on the website. Yes, all the everything should be sent out. No, the people are asking about where the pictures come from. Your students choose the picture. So you guide your students to choose a picture that's got people and a place and interaction. The people have to be doing something, and we need to see those things in the picture. But the students can choose their own picture to fit in with the specification. Okay. Please, any kind of ongoing questions, you're very welcome to direct those through to Rebecca. And I'll say we've kind of got about 3 minutes to go, but and I think we will be cut off at 11. But just thanks ever so much for your time this morning. I hope you found it useful. There's always a lot to learn when it's a new spec, really, and you're kind of just starting teaching it. So thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Tim. And thank you, everyone. I'll end the meeting now. I've seen that some people are asking for the material. You should be able to access the material on the website, except from the link that I sent earlier. There's nothing else that I can actually send to you, unfortunately. But yeah, I hope that does help. Thank you.
It should all be available from the website, and if not, as I say, Rebecca will certainly be able to to be in touch with you. How many languages do I speak? Oh goodness, I don't know. French and Spanish, okay, and German a bit, and Portuguese a bit, and Italian a bit, and yes. Okay, I think we need to hang up now. I think we need to say thank you and enjoy the rest of your day, whatever time it is.